Okay, welcome everybody to the Operator Lifecycle Manager issue triage. Let's go ahead and get started. So last time we went through issues specifically for the 019 release. So we kind of skipped over taking a look at things in order of when they were open. So I'm just going to start from the top this week. So let's see. First up, why is subscription and install plan have different approval methods? Right. Okay. This is just a question about the scoping of related install of operator subscriptions in a namespace. So it should just be a matter of describing that install plans scope to all of the operators in a namespace, and that has to do with the way that we deal with install and dependency management. Okay.
Hey, Kevin.
Yes.
I don't know if it's just me, but I think your audio is very low.
Okay. Is that any better?
Yeah.
Oh, so much better. Yep.
Okay. Okay, I'm going to close this one out. All right, let's move on to the next one. Allow to specify annotations on deployments in the CSV. So this is basically asking for OLM to implement a feature to define arbitrary annotations onto a deployment in the deployment spec in the CSV. I think it's a reasonable thing to ask for something like this, given some of the other knobs that already exist in the CSV. I think this probably doesn't exist, mostly because we're trying to avoid adding any more to the CSV spec than what we absolutely need to. So this one, I mean, somebody else can chime in if they feel differently, but this one to me feels a little bit like something that we don't that seems reasonable to implement, but we probably would ask somebody in the community to do it because we would rather be focused on building new APIs that just have this by default, because you can just drop a deployment directly into the bundle. So I'm thinking we can probably describe some of that and then maybe add a label to this story, which is just good first issue, and we can put it in the backlog.
Yeah, the thing that's striking me as it feels like a pattern that we get asked to put in. Like the last 2 times I saw this kind of request was with regards to catalog source, where they wanted us to implement a feature that catalog source, same thing, annotations for the deployment in catalog source. So maybe we can have the same thoughts about the same things and then bundle all of that together and at least like label them as related issues and track them together.
Do we still is there an issue in the registry that defines? I mean, I still think it's or I'm sorry, this actually would be on the catalog source API, so it would probably still be in the OLM repository. Do we have an issue that's open that talks about that? I think in either case, it's just a separate stub, right? Like we don't have a way of dynamically defining stuff that goes in a deployment, right? That sounds a lot like pod presets, which we've already kind of gone down that road in the past. So I don't know if there's necessarily value in like attempting to solve them in the same way. But I don't know. At the very least, it seems reasonable to at least like mention that link in this issue.
We do do some projection. I know from CSVs down to deployments. So
right.
It is sort of a question of like whether that should be extended for like all things too.
Well, the catalog source one is interesting to me because if you like, we have a way around this for catalogs, which is if you don't want to have all the bootstrapping stuff for free as part of the catalog image, then you can just make your own catalog source by starting your own pod and then wiring up a service and then using the address type catalog source. For CSV, I think it makes sense for us to need to have some projection because there's no way for you to go and make your own deployment and attach that to a CSV.
I see. So you're specifically talking about like if somebody wanted to create a proxy catalog source that layered content onto the bundles. Though I am not sure that would solve the issue or on that case, or would provide the feature, because remember, bundles are unpacked by OLM and the resolver directly from the image. So like the content of the CSV gets thrown away. Like we clear it out of, you know what I mean?
Sorry, yeah, no, I'm not saying that I'm not saying that the catalog should project down to the stuff it's installing. I'm just saying that like the catalog source API does a thing where if you use image type catalog source, it creates a deployment for that catalog. Or actually, I think it just creates a pod for that catalog, right? And if you wanted to add an annotation to that pod, right, like maybe you wanted to run somewhere, right? Like there's lots of things that you would want to do to configure that deployment in some way. There's an opt-out, right? There's a release valve for if you want to do customization on top. Yep. So I guess my thought process is that they're just kind of separate problems. And I think like I personally think trying to define every single possible knob for all the stuff that gets configured by a cube API is fool's gold. Like, I think it's just impossible to support all of that stuff unless there was some generic templating API on top that let you just reflect down into whatever resource was getting generated. I could kind of see the argument that you should be copying labels down or maybe even annotations down. But in the general case, if you want to specify some resource requests, like that's something that you can't just sort of generically define because it's got a spec and it changes over time, and all of the baggage that comes associated with that.
Okay, so this is sort of phrased as a question, but it's more of a feature request. We already know that like the long term is solved by virtue of design. I feel like we should probably make the executive decision of whether or not to like actually implement something on CSVs to do the downward projection. My take is that it's not really valuable enough when you consider the risk involved in messing with like any of the deployment hash template projection stuff and like the possibility of conflicts there.
That's a good point.
So maybe we say, yeah, this is going to be solved long term in this way, and then point to sort of like arbitrary manifests.
I can point them to RuckPack.
Yes, you can point them to RuckPack. I just don't want to like cross people's wires and go, oh, well, this thing is not usable yet. But yeah, probably a good idea. Just point to RuckPack. It's not worth agonizing over this. Oh man, I can't wait to have a Neuralink. Just think the block and then it gets automatically created. The proper grammar.
Yeah, I don't know. That might be a hot minute.
Yeah, but think of all the time it'll save. I wanted to ask, I joined a little bit late, but since we have a really small group today, and it looks like we have Akihiko here. Maybe we should see if they have any particular issue that they wanted to go over up front so that we can like
No, this is Aki.
avoid-
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, this is Aki Kuroda. I'm from IBM. So yeah, I was asked to join this team. I mean, the community, see what's going on. Yeah, just I moved IBM, inside IBM. I moved a different organization. Then I think we are interested in OLM or operator area. So this organization want me to join this community and then help if I can help something. So this is the first day, or actually second day in this group. I mean, in this organization. So I'm just trying to learn how the activity is going on, and then so I don't have any specific issue I'm interested in. But eventually, I want to try to maybe contribute some review or code fix, something like that. And that is my plan. That's all.
Oh, awesome. Thank you for joining and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, I see one more at the top that's been triaged or that has not been triaged yet. So what is the best practice to no downtime upgrade OLM itself? Interesting. So I mean, you could reasonably, right? Like we have leader election implemented in OLM. So you could pretty reasonably use a rolling deployment. I don't know that there's anything else to do besides that. I mean, you need to probably, if you wanted to use the OLM like install script, that would not work. But if you wanted to configure this with the set of deployments that constitutes OLM, you could probably do it pretty easily.
Well, that's really strange. What this person is describing. They're saying that like the CRD is being deleted. But they won't.
Well,
So
they're doing this though, right? They uninstall OLM and reinstall OLM. I'm
Why?
imagining that means that they're using like the operator SDK or whatever uninstall command. I think that does kill the CRDs. Yeah, that seems like the wrong thing to do.
So like are all of our upgrades as deployed to OpenShift have literally just been apply this set of manifests on the cluster, and that includes the updated deployment. And that updated deployment has logic, like the OLM itself knows how to, like you said, has leader election, knows how to clean up for the previous resources, and roll forward. So I think they should just not be deleting the CRDs and just be applying the manifests unless there's, you know, other instructions with the release. But maybe mention something like it would be nice to self-host OLM in bundle.
Yeah, I mean, I think I've been pushing that pretty hard, especially in terms of like certain components, because it would be nice to be able to run them separately outside the scope of like the whole payload. That feels like maybe not even necessarily what they need. I feel like all we need to tell them here is like, hey, don't do uninstall.
Yeah, I'm not sure. It's uninstall is pretty vague.
Although now that I'm typing this, it's interesting because you know what we don't ever actually do is we don't test. Like I think this is fine, but we don't actually have an upgrade test at all from one upstream release to the next, right? We just kind of publish the new set of manifests and generally don't make breaking API changes. I wonder if we looked at like the historical set of OLM minor versions, if you can actually roll through all of them without running into a CRD upgrade issue.
That's a good point. I am not sure. Maybe it's not worth it to go back through all of our upstream releases and figure that out, but maybe it is worth it to get a test for that. Like what we used to have, like way back in the day, was some GitLab CI that would have a soak cluster, and like whenever something would merge to master, OLM on master would be deployed to that, and so that would give us some sort of upgrade signal
Yeah.
between commits, but not necessarily between minor releases. I'm sorry, I guess patch releases and minor releases. But
It sort of feels like the test that we need is OLM on master should just keep track of whatever the latest release is, install the latest release, and then like we have some kind of upgrade script that reapplies all the manifests and sees that OLM is still working.
Yeah.
That feels like it wouldn't be hard to implement. I'm somewhat tempted now to go write an issue for that thing. add the triage label to this one as well. Okay, so it looks like we've gone through everything from the last couple of months on the OLM side. It's after 10:30, so why don't we move on? Let's take a look at the registry. Unable to run E2E tests locally, unauthorized. Running make E2E runs. Interesting.
Maybe we should, that's interesting that we have a push happening in make EDE.
I haven't run this in a while, so it feels like that seems bad.
Yeah, I know EDE local was for the longest time what you do to run local EDE tests. I'm wondering if we should just like get it configured correctly so that EDE does run locally, depending on whatever the configuration is in the make file.
We don't even
Did
have
you-
E2E local
No,
anymore.
maybe it triggered drop.
It could be.
EDE.
Yeah, I know we at one point where we investigated because once we added all the OPM stuff here, we needed to do container build images. I know that at one point we investigated what it would take to stand up an ephemeral registry. I don't think it's that hard, but I think that's probably what we need if we want to just completely remove the external registry requirement. But even like short of that, we could probably just build something that takes, a parameter that's like, here, what is it? Give me a namespace in a registry that you have access to.
Yeah, so is this, I'm wondering if this person is configured. Well, first of all, I see no prerequisites there. So it's not happening in the make file. I'm wondering where the build is actually being called or the push is actually being made. Right, because that just runs the Ginkgo test, which starts kind. But it doesn't necessarily push an image. It's been a long time since I looked at it though.
Yeah, I think we'd have to look.
Because with kind, you already don't need to have a registry because you can just load the image into the cluster node, which is
That's true.
what I'm almost entirely sure was happening with their local EDE tests for the longest time.
I think that was happening in OLM though. Why do we need, again, even I haven't looked at the test for a long time, but it feels odd that we need,
Oh.
Yeah,
I was thinking about the wrong repo. I apologize.
it feels odd that we need a registry test, anything that's an operator registry.
What? Why? That this repository has a thing that literally knows how to build registry images, right? So running an E2E test that doesn't actually do any image building seems like, if anything, that's a thing that's problematic.
Okay, yeah, but since we are moving away from that, I think I was thinking in terms of that, because you're thinking in OPM index commands, right?
But even then, right? Like, we probably like we'll need something that knows how to interact with these container images. And in order to do that, like, especially like, what if we made a spec change and we need to test the new version of that thing? It's really brittle the way we do this right now, where we like publish a well-known image and then just test against that, rather than like codifying the tests themselves to build the image so that you can just have whatever is the latest version of the spec and test against it.
So there was a, sorry, I don't mean to
No, go for it.
run over what Anik was saying. I should probably stop at that point first. I think our tooling should be going in the direction where we're not like building images at all. We're maybe like building artifacts that can be turned into images, stored in images, which I think is what we're doing with declarative config. But on the flip side, I remember ages ago, I and maybe some other people had done the same thing, had written a test harness that fires up an in-process image registry,
Right.
and points the tests against that depending on the configuration. So I believe there were some strange race conditions with the registry itself that were causing the tests to fail intermittently. And I'm pretty sure Tim opened a PR to like disable the tests that were using that. But I think a lot of the code is still there. And maybe if we can overcome that race condition problem, this will work.
I think you're right. I think that the right answer to this is have some ephemeral index that gets stood up as part of the test suite. But yeah, it seems like we need to just go and do that. I think I agree. Support OPM registry RM bundle by special version. I think that, well, I have two things to say about this one. The first one is that this definitely doesn't work because what they're asking you to do is like remove a bundle from anywhere in a channel, which we can't support because of the way that we build the graph with OPM index and registry commands. So that's one. And then the second is that even if we wanted to go and do this, I don't know if I necessarily see any value out of it, because like you could probably get away with doing this if you were just using some remote or something like that. But like, I kind of feel like we've pushed this before, and it's because we're just going to have declarative config and we won't have imperative commands that do anything like this anyway. So I think this is a close and not going to do anything with issue. I don't know if anybody disagrees, but I think that makes sense to me.
Yeah. And I think basically what they're asking to do amounts to a deprecate truncate, because at least in replaces mode, we can't safely rewire
That's a good point.
dependencies. Like we have no idea what the author's intent was. And to infer that is to add more heuristics to something. Like I'm almost at the point where I would like there to be a moratorium on all new
I agree.
imperative registry and bundle
Yep.
commands.
Unable to read directory. Is this, I mean, it's hard to say without any response from the reporter, but I'm guessing this is another instance of somebody's trying to do this and it's happening that they don't have the correct right permissions for the contents of the index image that they're building from, and that they need higher order user permissions on their system. But I think let's wait for them to respond before we add anything like that. Okay. Interesting. Alex is looks like we did talk about this one at the last triage meeting that we talked about it at, and that Alex assigned it to himself. I don't know if there's anything else to talk about on this one. So it sounds like we're back at the top. So, okay, we've got 14 minutes left. I was actually thinking one of the things that we never do is we never take a look at issues in some of the other projects that we have now that they're being spun up. So I would like to at least spend a few minutes taking a look at the API project first, and then if we have time, start putting Ruck back into the rotation of stuff we discuss on this call. So let's take a look at API. So this is basically saying we have some API validation methods, and we should have some mechanism to encode them with a return code so that they can programmatically figure out what kind of error or warning it was. I'm not out of hand. I'm not necessarily opposed to doing something like this. It does require us to be a lot more formal with the spec of the validation stuff that's in here. But yeah, I mean, I think it seems like something that seems like a reasonable thing to include in the project. It would be the other thing I'm thinking about is this really only applies to the V1 bundle spec. And so we would have to have a whole new mechanism in the future for anything with any new spec that we define. And I'm imagining that the V2 spec probably looks a lot simpler than the V1 spec, especially if we continue down the path of the contents of the manifest directory is any arbitrary thing. So you'd mostly be validating stuff in either labels or the metadata of the bundle itself. Interesting. I didn't know we had make manifests. This is just to, what does it actually do? Oh, this is just the controller gen stuff. I gotcha. this seems like it should be relatively straightforward to implement. So I'm going to add the good first issue label. Okay, so we've got 7 minutes left. I think we should try to at least have a few minutes to take a look at some of the issues that are on RecBack. A lot of these are structural. So it's probably useful for us to just kind of go through 1 or 2 of these, talk about some of the stuff that is currently in progress on the project, and then start applying some labels to these things as well. So this one is implement the K8s bundle provisioner. So I think there's already a pull request that does some of this. Oh, yeah, he even mentions it in this. But essentially, this is it's like a tracking issue that talks about some of the stuff that is going to be in the initial version of a provisioner to apply bundles to the cluster, and I'm assuming knows how to do pivoting between bundle instances. Yeah. Does it make sense for us to create an initial milestone for this thing? Like a 0.0.1 version?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna do that. Okay. Anything else before you move on? Okay, cool. Let's take a look at one of these. Create a contributing MD for the repository. I think that's reasonable. Do we want to fill this out anymore?
No, I think we should just have the 001. In fact, I think probably all of these are the 001. Maybe we can go back to the list and look for something that isn't.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, I mean, you're imagining that all of these, there's a couple I threw in at the beginning that I don't know if they need to be part of 001. Add mechanism for exposing bundle content to end users. Pulling and storing bundle content. Documentation website, that might be something we don't need for 001.
Yeah.
I'll just put that in the backlog. Automate the build and testing workflows. That seems like it should be in 001. Use Q for provisioner config.
I'm actually already started this. It's pretty straightforward because it's only like the only thing that I think we're going to need to swap is the image for now. So it's basically just going to be Q to pull in the generated CRDs and template the image. And then that's going to get used for testing.
Yeah. So does this issue also encompass like generating the initial set of manifests and like writing a script to apply them? I guess maybe that's just kubectl apply, but okay, cool. Makes sense to me. Okay. Override bundle contents is the one I wrote the other day. I don't know. This doesn't feel like it needs to be part of 001 either. So I'm going to throw it in the backlog. It's mostly just a way to track that we probably want to get something like this at some point.
Yeah.
Okay. This one I opened 3 weeks ago. Do I remember why I wrote it? If the bundle is referenced by image tag. I don't remember the context of this.
Yeah. I don't understand. Maybe this has something to do with identity of a bundle, but bundle identity is determined via like the resource name. And so like
Right.
the resource is the thing that garbage collection is tied to rather than like a particular image tag.
Right. That's why this doesn't make sense in my head. That's what I was thinking as well. So I'm just going to close this.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, we're pretty much at time. I guess offline, I can add the 001 tag to these other 3 issues. They all make sense to me. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody. I think we got some good stuff done today, and I will see you all again in 2 weeks. Have a good one.